Hey guys, before we get started today, this video is once again sponsored by Discord. As I mentioned in my last video, I actually have my own Discord server. It's live, it's in the description. You can talk about the new GTA updates, find heist partners or people to sell crates with, plus you can create your own servers with friends and play together in Grand Theft Auto Online. Discord is by far the best way to communicate and play games, especially GTA, with your friends. All right, so moving on from that, one thing I think is very interesting is the GTA 5 map and how the original one might actually be found in-game. The one we were supposed to get, or maybe the original design that Rockstar was working on before we got the finalized version that we see today. And I think Rockstar did a really good job with GTA 5's map. For the most part, it's pretty balanced. You have the big city in the south, which is obviously Los Santos, and then throughout the rest of the map, you have a combination of desert, wilderness, mountains, surrounded by a couple of sprawling towns like Sandy Shores and Grapeseed and Palito Bay, a couple of interesting landmarks like the Alamo Sea and the Fort Zancudo military base, and for the most part, that's it. It's a pretty well-balanced map. However, is the original one that Rockstar was going to do actually found inside of the game itself? Well, let's take a look at that right now. So in order to check this out, you need to find a website that is acceptthechaos.com. It's essentially an atheist society website, and we've touched on this in the past in a video I made where I talked about the real reason why there was no children in Grand Theft Auto Online. There's a tab that actually allows you to play as God, and it takes you through a bunch of simulated images. And if you get past the first image, which is the kids and stuff like that, the second image is actually of a map of, I think, the original Los Santos. So I want to say that this map, this image right here, is what GTA 5's Los Santos map was going to be, or at least a very early production of the map itself. So if we take a look at it, the first big thing that jumps out to me is the city is basically one giant conglomerate. Now, it is kind of hard to tell the scale and the size of this because we're looking at it from an aerial view and we don't really know how big the streets are, how tall those buildings are, etc. But it looks as if Rockstar's version of this map was basically one big city with a couple of mountain ranges, a few lakes, and then some sprawling towns. So that's exactly what I'm seeing right here. You can obviously see the big downtown area. It's really hard to make out some of the landmarks that are there. For the most part, you can see like one or two big highways. You can also see some big high rises. Now, this map, strangely enough, doesn't look to have an airport, which has always been a pretty iconic part of GTA games, whether it's Vice City or San Andreas or GTA 4. There's always an airport that you can do shenanigans and whatnot on. So the fact that this didn't have one was pretty shocking. You can also sort of see the two mountain ranges that surround the city, what looks to be a very small lake or dam, and then sort of two very tiny towns on both shores of the beach. One is more in the northwest corner, one is more in the southeast corner. So again, this actually would be a pretty cool map. Honestly, this would have been nice if this was like an island off the coast of Los Santos that we could actually visit. A lot of people, including myself, have been talking about map expansions recently, and maybe instead of a map expansion, Rockstar were to do some sort of island expansion where they give us like an island city like this that's new to explore. I think that could actually be a ton of fun. And then obviously as we get out to the shore, you can see a couple little rock structures and stuff like that. There's not a whole lot else going on outside of what we can actually see on land. Now, if we were actually to click in on this one more time, again, it gives you the option to click to play God. It actually takes you to like a newspaper article where that city we were just looking at is now underwater, where a tsunami that came out of nowhere, according to the article, kills 200,000 people. So maybe that gives you some scale and some size of the city, is that tsunami killed 200,000 people. So assuming it doesn't get everyone, you would say there's more than 200,000 people living there. That's a pretty big size city for what we can see. There's a couple of other articles on the website and the newspaper clipping that I don't really think gives all that much insight or information on the actual city itself. But again, it is still pretty cool to see the first image we looked at and then comparing it to the one that's underwater. It also would have been pretty cool on a separate topic to have dynamic weather events like that, like a tsunami that would have been pretty epic. So getting back to the original image itself, what I think happened here is this was Rockstar's original idea for the Grand Theft Auto 5 map, or it might have been the first thing they worked on. There's a good chance that Rockstar built the city of Los Santos first, and then they started building all of the sort of wilderness, mountains, and deserts around it, because if you would imagine, that would probably be the hardest part of this game, building the city with all the unique homes and houses and buildings and structures. For the most part, doing the desert and the wilderness and the trees, I would say would be a little bit easier. So that's my first theory, is this was just the first thing that Rockstar worked on, and then they eventually got to the rest, because when they were building these in-game websites, they were doing that back in like 2011, 2012, maybe even 2010, before really the game was probably built. And that's actually been proved based off of the in-game commercials we see and in-game photographs. They're always of like beta images and of the beta map. So it wouldn't be shocking if that was indeed the beta map that we were supposed to get in GTA 5. Or number two, this was the map we were supposed to get, and then Rockstar ended up adding more onto it because they maybe felt that it was too small or didn't have enough landmass, as it definitely looks significantly smaller than the original GTA 5 map we have right now. Now, there's also two other examples I want to show you guys. This is actually a map that NPCs can be seen holding. It's kind of like a Los Santos tourist guide map. And the image is not super big, but you can see there's an NPC holding a map. And it looks very similar to the image we saw on the website, where it almost looks like Los Santos is compressed into a smaller island. Now, that island does have a lot more similarities to the original GTA map, including the docks, including all the various attributes of the city itself, the airport. But it does look as if the wilderness part was compressed a little bit. It doesn't actually look the same. Now, again, that's only given the very limited screenshot we can see there, but I still think that's pretty interesting to note. And finally, the last thing we're going to be taking a look at is an actual beta version of the GTA 5 map taken straight from the Grand Theft Auto files. So I'm going to be putting these images side by side so you can see the difference. Obviously, the one on the left and the one in black and gray is the beta one, and the one on the right in a little bit of color is the original one. Now, there's actually not a whole lot of differences here. Probably the biggest difference that I can see is the railroad tracks seem to be way more prominent on the beta one, where you can like see the circuit that it wraps around the map. So I think at some point in time, Rockstar made the executive decision that just cluttered the map way too much, and that they didn't want to end up including that in there. So again, pretty interesting change as we can see. Other than that, you're going to find a lot of minor differences with a ton of the roads in game. It seems as if Rockstar added a bunch of more tiny little back roads and whatnot in the final version of the map. They also added extra details too. One thing to note is they removed the airport from Grapeseed. So the original Grapeseed area didn't seem to have a little runway, but obviously in the final game, we know that it does. So again, really cool stuff right there. Also in the beta version, there doesn't seem to be a Humane Labs. So maybe Rockstar was still considering whether they were going to be adding that or whether they were going to be, putting something else there. So there's definitely a lot of little differences, but it is pretty cool to see almost sort of the evolution of the GTA 5 map. I mean, they never really revealed it to us until really right up until the launch of the game. Even when the original trailers came out in 2011 and 2012, we never saw the map. So it was kind of hard to judge, how big it was and where everything was going to be taking place. So going back to that website, I wonder if that was the original one we were going to receive.